Darth Maul spent his entire life chasing revenge. Trained from childhood to be a weapon of hatred, Maul was never given a choice, only a singular purpose: fulfill his master's bidding. As the apprentice of Darth Sidious, he was destined for greatness, until he was discarded, broken, and left without direction. Despite surviving his injuries on Naboo, he became one of the most tragic figures in Star Wars, suffering through his entire life and losing everyone and everything he held dear. Only one thing kept him going: revenge. And that's the story we're going to look at today. Chapter 1. Chosen by Darth Sidious. The year was 54 BBY, and the world of Dathomir will forever be changed by the birth of a young Zabrak boy. Now, Dathomir is unlike most worlds in the galaxy. It is ruled by a matriarchal system with Mother Talzin, a witch from the unknown regions, leading the Night Sisters. Meanwhile, the Zabrak males born were secondary to the Night Sisters, serving only as foot soldiers and to propagate their species. Nonetheless, this boy was born to none other than Mother Talzin, though he was never treated as a treasured son. But Talzin was always away with the Night Sisters in their village, which was separated from where the Night Brothers lived. As such, the boy was forced to take care of his younger and weaker blood brothers, Feral and Savage Opress. While this boy himself had a nickname, he'd forgotten it due to the events that soon followed the day he received his tattoos during his first birthday. The conditions he was forced to live under as a Night Brother filled this boy with anger. He grew up with an inner rage he could not quell. As a result, he was often the angriest among the young Dathomirian Zabraks. But while he may have been angry, he also felt a strong connection to nature and the forest just outside their home. He was Force-sensitive, a gift that came from his mother, who herself was strong in the Force. But Talzin and the other Night Sisters used their gifts in the Force in another way. They were masters of magic, a power akin to witchcraft instead of the traditional Force powers. It was the Night Sisters' magic that drew Darth Sidious's interest. The Sith, who craved absolute power above everything, longed for the powers the Night Sisters possessed. Talzin, in turn, wanted a piece of the dark side power the Sith were masters of. As a result, the Talzin formed an alliance with Sidious, often exchanging knowledge with each other, but only to such a point where the two were left wanting more from each other. Sidious often visited Dathomir, and he was quick to notice the young Dathomirian boy who often kept to himself, hiding in his room instead of speaking to the mysterious man. The boy often feared the growing bond between the man and his mother, seemingly understanding that his future would eventually get tied to this enigmatic figure. As such, the boy was often angry, unable to understand how he felt about his mother and the Sith Lord, who was growing closer and closer to her. But Sidious was quick to notice the growing anger within this boy. So, wanting this anger to grow to fuel his powers in the dark side, Sidious ordered Talzin to give her son to a handler, who would then mistreat him. In return, Talzin was supposed to become Sidious's apprentice. Overhearing the conversation, the boy ran angrily into the forest, where he stayed the entire night until he returned the next morning. Upon his return, the boy was given to the handler, who threw him into a pit without allowing him to say goodbye to his mother. Throughout his ordeal, the handler mistreated the boy, putting him through countless abuse, all for the sake of appeasing the Dark Lord. After the pit, the boy was given to the Keeper's two sons, who abused him just as much as their father did. When he was hungry, the boy was not even allowed a good meal. He only ate the scraps the handler's sons did not want. The anger in the boy's heart eventually evolved into full-blown resentment for everything in life. His perceptions on life changed, making it hard for him to understand the concept of familial love. He also began to hate his mother, believing that Talzin abandoned him. But these were all part of Sidious's plans. The boy's hatred manifested through the dark side, and he would practice his powers whenever he had a chance. As the boy's powers evolved, his resilience also grew. The handler's sons stopped beating him upon realizing their physical abuse no longer worked on him. Eventually, rumors spread that a man would arrive for an event called the Selection, where he would acquire a warrior from the Night Brothers. However, the boy's keeper refused to allow him to join, angering him further. He used his powers to break the lock on his door to join the Selection. But when he arrived at the arena, he found out that the man looking for a warrior was none other than Sidious, the figure responsible for his abuses. Angered by the sight of the man who ruined his life, the boy used the dark side to choke his keeper and his sons, all in front of the Dark Lord and Talzin. Pleased at what he saw, Sidious declared the boy the winner of the selection. He named him his new apprentice, much to the disappointment of Talzin, who thought she would be his apprentice. Despite hating the man who had now become his master, the boy left Dathomir with Sidious. Meanwhile, Talzin swore she would one day get her son back and avenge Sidious's treachery. Chapter 2. Serving the Sith. Under the tutelage of Darth Sidious, the boy from Dathomir transitioned into a weapon for the Sith through years of brutal instruction. He trained as an apprentice, a warrior, and an assassin, eventually receiving the title of Darth Maul from his master. For many years, Maul worked to become an acrobatic warrior who was relentless against his enemies. He learned to use a dual-bladed lightsaber, and he eventually crafted his own using ancient plans provided by his master. Sidious had hidden these plans in a forgotten entrance within the Sith archives to ensure their secrecy. Maul used pieces that he stole or acquired through various means to build his weapon. He reflected on the amount of pain and blood that went into its construction while he sat in the darkness before a summit in the Kamel sector. The majority of the blood spilled during its creation belonged to others and not to Maul himself. On top of his lightsaber training, he also learned various martial arts through the use of specialized droids designed to push his body to its absolute physical limits. During his training, Sidious took Maul to the planet of Malachor to witness the sight of a great battle between the Jedi and the Sith. Under the supervision of his master, Maul learned to master his anger and let it burn within him. He began to turn that anger into a focused and potent hate. Sidious forced Maul to breathe in the ashes of fallen Sith warriors who died when an ancient weapon was activated in the temple on the planet. While he breathed in the ash, Maul experienced visions of his Sith predecessors being struck down by the Jedi. He felt the phantom pain of every saber strike as if he were dying alongside his fallen brothers during that ancient war. This training made Maul long for revenge against the Jedi Order, which had defeated the Sith a millennium before. Alongside Sidious, Maul hoped to destroy the Jedi and restore the Sith to their former power in the galaxy. He viewed himself as the instrument of a long-delayed justice for his order. But Maul felt a personal hatred for the Jedi that went beyond his official Sith duties. He was filled with rage when he realized that the Jedi never came for him when he was a child on Dathomir, as it was customary for the Jedi to take children they sensed were sensitive to the Force. But for him, he did not know if they found him unworthy or if they simply ignored his existence, and this perceived neglect fueled his internal fire and hatred toward them. Maul slowly counted the days until he could have his revenge on the members of the Order. At the same time, he grew impatient with the slow planning of his master, and he resented the pain he felt while waiting for the time to unleash himself on the galaxy. Several years into his training, Maul became increasingly impatient for a real confrontation with the Jedi. He enjoyed hunting wild game and stalking Jedi like Kat Kien and her Padawan in the shadows of Coruscant. Shortly after that, Sidious sent Maul to kill Kellick's pirates, where he learned a young Jedi Padawan was being auctioned. Maul killed the witnesses and hired bounty hunters, including Cad Bane, to locate the Padawan. After a brawl on Nar Shaddaa, they tortured a droid to find the auction in the Drazkel system. Maul and his bounty hunter allies traveled to a space station for an auction held by Zevs Rexus, where a Twi'lek Padawan named Eldracatus was the prize. The Zabrak used a fake name to infiltrate the event, and he located the girl in a cell. He waited for a group of Muggans to win the auction, and then he ambushed them to take the Padawan. Zrexus rigged their shuttle with an explosive, which forced a crash on a moon. On the surface, Maul gave the girl her lightsaber so they could defeat the hunters sent to kill them. Once the hunters fell, Maul and Catus engaged in a duel. The Padawan used a landslide to bury him, but Maul emerged and he killed her with his blade. He later executed Zrexus to keep the Sith secret safe. Sidious was pleased when Maul confessed his hunger to kill more Jedi, as it was not too long after that the apprentice would soon kill a true and experienced Jedi. Chapter 3. Revealing the Sith to the Jedi. Just before the tensions between the Trade Federation and the Republic intensified, Maul assumed a disguise and formed a fake cartel to intercept Skarn's shipments alongside a man sensitive in the Force named Zek Pero. After fighting several buyers, Maul killed Pero with a piece of metal and returned to his master. Sidious voiced his concerns about these antics, comparing his apprentice to the foolish Pero. They soon traveled to Malachor, where Maul inhaled the ashes of dead Sith and experienced a vision. There, Maul appeared as a Jedi, but his disgust for Jedi idolizers led him to slaughter a group of Zabraks. He emerged understanding that rage alone could not defeat the Jedi. Later, Maul went to the planet Quinn to investigate pirate leader Zilastra and her plans against the Jedi Council. While Sidious appeared as a senator to speak with a Jedi Siniskull through a hologram, Maul revealed himself and used the Force to lift the confused official. Then the year 32 BBY came, and the Sith were finally ready to emerge from the shadows of the galaxy. Darth Sidious and his master Darth Plagueis had plotted for decades to bring chaos to the galaxy. Sidious had killed Plagueis to be the one to carry out the plans himself. He was now prepared to finally put their plans into motion, and the perfect weapon for the early phase of the plot to destroy the Jedi was already in his hands. Darth Maul lived for the chance to kill Jedi, and he gladly served as the primary weapon for his master. Sidious was secretly Senator Sheev Palpatine, a politician from the world of Naboo, and he orchestrated a conflict between the Trade Federation and his home planet. The Federation felt angry about new taxes on trade routes, so they blockaded Naboo with their massive ships and battle droid armies. The Supreme Chancellor sent Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi to negotiate, but the Federation tried to kill them on the orders of Sidious. The Jedi escaped to the planet's surface, where they rescued Queen Padme Amidala and fled into space. This escape frustrated the Sith, because they needed the Queen to sign a treaty that would make their illegal invasion look legal to the rest of the Republic. Sidious commanded Maul to find the Queen and her Jedi protectors at any cost, opening the Sith up to their eventual revelation to the Jedi. This led him to the remote desert world of Tatooine. One of Maul's search droids eventually spotted the Queen's ship just as it prepared for departure. With that information, Maul mounted his speeder bike, and he raced across the dunes toward his targets with his red lightsaber ready. He arrived just in time to find Qui-Gon Jinn and a young boy named Anakin Skywalker walking toward the ship. Without hesitation, Maul attacked the Jedi to finally unveil the Sith to their ancient enemies. The two warriors fought a brief but violent duel in the desert heat, and Maul used his physical strength to pressure the older Jedi. Qui-Gon struggled to keep up with the intensity of the Sith, who was younger and more energetic. Just as Maul prepared to strike a final blow, the Queen's ship flew over them, allowing Qui-Gon to jump onto the boarding ramp. The ship escaped into the sky, leaving Maul alone on the sand with his growing anger. This encounter revealed the existence of the Sith to the Jedi Order for the first time in 1,000 years. Nevertheless, the Jedi Council was yet to ascertain whether or not it was indeed the Sith who attacked Qui-Gon. Meanwhile, Maul felt frustrated by his failure to kill the Jedi, but he did not realize that the boy he saw would one day become a powerful Sith himself. The dark side continued to grow within Maul, and he prepared for the final battle that would determine the fate of the Naboo system. Chapter 4. Maul's Death. The Jedi and the Queen escaped to Coruscant, and Sidious used his identity as Palpatine to manipulate Amidala. He convinced her to call for a vote of no confidence against Chancellor Valorum, and this led to a new election where Palpatine was the favored candidate to lead the Republic. Meanwhile, Maul returned to Naboo under the orders of his master, and he waited for the Jedi and the Queen to return so they could face the Federation occupation forces. Maul felt anticipation for the coming confrontation as he spent his time choosing the exact location where he would engage in his duel with the Jedi. But then, the Naboo and Gungans joined forces, leading the droid army into a battle far away from the capital city. The Queen and the Jedi used this distraction to move into the city and regain control of the palace. When Maul arrived on Naboo, the Neimoidians tried to offer him comfort, but he ignored them to focus on his task. He decided to lure the Jedi into the narrow corridors and catwalks inside the power generation facility, where he practiced with his lightsaber. He examined the deep chute in the final room and decided that the hole was not a threat to him. Then Gunray sent him a communication about the landing of the Queen, but Maul told the Neimoidians to let the Naboo and Jedi come to them. The battle reached the royal palace as Maul stood waiting in the hangar for Jinn and Kenobi. The Sith Lord fought both Jedi at once before the fight moved into the generator complex. Maul dominated the duel through his aggression and mastery of the double-bladed lightsaber, a weapon he did not use against Qui-Gon in their first meeting. but he also gave ground so he could lead the Jedi deeper into the facility. He separated the Jedi by knocking Kenobi down, trapping the younger Jedi behind laser walls. Maul took advantage of this moment to fight Jyn alone, using an unorthodox style to hit the Jedi on the face with his lightsaber hilt. The strike stunned Qui-Gon long enough as he dropped his guard before Maul stabbed the Jedi Master. Jyn fell to the ground with a fatal wound as Kenobi watched from behind the energy barriers. When the laser walls deactivated, Kenobi rushed forward to engage Maul. The young Jedi felt anger and grief as he managed to cut Maul's double-bladed lightsaber in half. However, Maul used the Force to push Kenobi over the edge of the reactor shaft, and the Jedi lost his weapon as he fell. Kenobi grabbed a small nozzle and hung there while Maul taunted him. The Sith kicked the lightsaber of the Jedi into the darkness, but Kenobi remained calm and used the Force to leap over Maul. He summoned the lightsaber of his master into his hand mid-air before he sliced through the waist of the Sith Lord. Maul fell down the shaft in 2 pieces, believed to have been killed by Obi-Wan right then and there, as it was impossible for anyone to have survived getting bisected and falling down a deep shaft. On that same day, Palpatine achieved his goal and became the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic. The body of the Sith was never found, and Sidious eventually chose Count Dooku to be his new apprentice, while the Council turned their attention to other matters. Chapter 5. Maul survives. Tell me, child, do you know who I am? Do they whisper my name in the classrooms of your academy, down the winding halls of your space station, in the hollows and fields of your farming planet, or across the dunes of your desert home? If they do, what do they say of me? That I was once a great Sith Lord, apprentice to the most powerful being in the galaxy? That I killed the legendary Jedi named Qui-Gon Jinn at the Battle of Naboo? Do they remember my glory? My distinctive black and red skin and horns? My unmatched skill with the double-bladed lightsaber? Or do they just remember how I died? The Sith apprentice may have met a terrible fate on the world of Naboo, but his story did not end with his fall down a deep reactor shaft. While he was cut in half by the blade of a Jedi, the hate and rage within his heart managed to keep his spirit tethered to his broken body. Through a combination of his Dathomirian physiology, the dark side of the Force, and the magic of his mother, the young Zabrak survived even as he tumbled into a trash container. He was eventually dumped on the junkyard world of Lotho Minor, which was a place filled with filth and discarded metal. There, in the dark bowels of the planet, he fashioned a 6-limbed metal apparatus for himself so that he could walk again. But the physical pain and the isolation took a toll on his mind, causing his sanity to slowly slip away over the long years. Throughout the years, the galaxy plunged deeper and deeper into war, as tensions between the Separatists or the Confederacy of Independent Systems had begun to stir. Maul was largely unaware of what was happening throughout the galaxy, or that his rival Obi-Wan Kenobi had taken the young Anakin Skywalker as his apprentice. During Maul's long exile, a group of people led by a droid named Captain Spikewheel arrived on the planet. The group included several individuals who were forced to spend a night on the junkyard world to prove their worth. One of these people, a man named Celes, became separated from his companions and was captured by the crazed Zabrak. The former Sith Lord muttered to himself and chased the others through a dark labyrinth, nearly killing them before he was caught in an electro net by a man named Grits. When they returned to the surface, they discovered that the Zabrak himself had sent a message to lure a ship to the planet because he wanted to escape. The droid captain tried to shoot him, but the fallen Sith destroyed her instead. In the chaos that followed, the ship launched into the sky, and the Zabrak fell back to the surface along with Grits. He killed the man shortly after they landed, remaining trapped on the desolate world. Meanwhile, to survive his hunger, the Zabrak made a bargain with a sneaky creature called Morley, who was a sentient anacondan. Morley agreed to bring him food in exchange for the leftovers, and this arrangement lasted for many years. Throughout this time, the former apprentice was driven mad by his despair and his intense desire for revenge against the Jedi who had defeated him. Even while he lived in the shadows of the junk heaps, his mind stayed focused on the face of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Far away from Coruscant, a young Skywalker even used the image of the Sith to train himself in combat, showing that the legacy of the Zabrak was not forgotten. Eventually, the galaxy was split in half as the Separatists launched their attack on the Republic, bringing about the Clone Wars. Count Dooku, who was given the name Darth Tyrannus, led the Separatists under the orders of Darth Sidious, who was secretly Chancellor Palpatine. Dooku, meanwhile, needed a weapon against the Jedi after he abandoned his own apprentice, Asajj Ventress. Mother Talzin forged an alliance with Count Dooku as she had already broken her contract with Sidious when the Sith Lord took Maul away decades ago. Wanting a Zabrak as his new apprentice, he asked Talzin to give him the finest warrior she had. This turned out to be Savage Opress, Maul's blood brother. Talzin used her magic to strengthen Opress's body. Meanwhile, Ventress, who was a Night Sister herself, worked in secret with Opress to eventually try to kill Dooku. However, the two failed as Opress returned to Talzin shortly after Dooku also abandoned him. On Dathomir, Mother Talzin never lost her connection to her son. She eventually told Savage Opress that the lost Sith could be found in the Outer Rim. She gave the younger brother a magical talisman to guide his path, leading him straight to the tunnels of Lotho Minor. When Savage finally found his brother, he saw a man who was barely a shadow of his former self. The Zabrak did not recognize his own kin, and he spent his time sobbing or laughing while muttering about the Jedi. Even at that time, Obi-Wan was the only one occupying the former Darth's mind, as Maul's hatred for his rival kept him alive even at the cost of his sanity. Believing that Morley had failed his brother, Savage killed the Anacondan and took the broken Zabrak back to Dathomir. There, Mother Talzin used her powerful incantations to repair the mind of her son. She then used parts of the destroyed battle droids to give him a new pair of cybernetic legs, finally restoring the warrior so she could seek the revenge he craved for so long. Chapter 6: The Return. It was 20 BBY during the height of the Clone Wars, and Maul regained his sanity with the help of Mother Talzin. He focused his entire being on seeking revenge against Obi-Wan Kenobi for his defeat on Naboo, an event he believed spiraled his life into chaos. At that point, he was no longer a Sith, replaced by Count Dooku at the side of the man he once called Master. But he still believed he and his brother Savage had one more purpose: vengeance on Kenobi. To draw the Jedi out, Maul led his brother to the world of Raydonia, where they slaughtered innocent civilians to send a message to the Jedi Council. Kenobi, who had been apprised by the Jedi Council of Maul's survival, arrived alone to face his old enemy. He faced a disadvantage as the brothers successfully captured him. However, the Jedi was rescued by Asajj Ventress, who also had a falling out with Opress and the Sith. Maul and Kenobi engaged in a lightsaber duel for the first time in over a decade, and the Zabrak used the death of Qui-Gon Jinn to goad the Jedi into a state of anger. This tactic overwhelmed Kenobi, who decided to escape the ship with Ventress before the brothers could finish them. Maul watched them flee, knowing that the pursuit would only fuel his ultimate quest for vengeance. Following the skirmish, Maul spoke to a child about his return to galactic affairs, promising that he would soon expose the Jedi as a false order. The brothers then began a rampage across the galaxy, eventually reaching the Cyblock transfer station. After they defeated the guards, they found a coffer filled with credits. Maul used this moment to demonstrate his superiority over Savage by disarming him in a brief contest of skill. He declared himself the Master and Savage the Apprentice, mimicking the Sith rule of two while also declaring themselves as the real Sith. With their power dynamic established, they traveled to the world of Florum to recruit a pirate crew. Maul bribed a squad of pirates to join his cause, and he killed those who questioned his authority while the pirate leader Hondo Ohnaka watched. The Jedi soon arrived on Florum, led by Kenobi and Adi Gallia. A fierce duel broke out in the pirate base, and Savage managed to kill Gallia by goring her belly with his horns. Facing a 2-on-1 situation, Kenobi lured the brothers into a narrow passage to trim the disadvantage. In doing so, he managed to sever one of Savage's arms during the struggle. Sensing a possible defeat, Maul used the Force to push Kenobi away and caused a cave-in to cover their retreat. As they fled, they realized the pirates had turned against them and rejoined Hondo. One of the pirates used a rocket launcher to damage their ship, as Maul lost one of his legs in the process. The brothers barely escaped the vessel before it crashed into the surface of the planet. Even though Hondo believed the brothers were incinerated, Kenobi suspected that Maul was still alive and plotting his next move. After all, he had seen his lightsaber cutting cleanly through Maul more than a decade ago, only to realize the Zabrak had survived. It would take more than a crash to kill Maul, as Kenobi believed. Chapter 7: The Shadow over Mandalore. Following their recent encounter with Obi-Wan Kenobi, the brothers drifted in the cold void of space, trapped within a damaged escape pod after their narrow flight from the planet Florum. Their oxygen levels dropped until they both fell into a deep unconsciousness, leaving their fate to the will of the stars. It was then that the Mandalorian splinter group known as Death Watch found them. Pre Vizsla, the leader of these warriors, stood over the broken forms of the Zabrak brothers. While his lieutenant, Bo-Katan Kryze, argued for their immediate execution, Vizsla noticed the lightsaber that belonged to Maul, so he decided that any enemy of the Jedi was a potential ally for his cause. The Mandalorians took the unconscious pair back to their hidden base on the moon of Zanbar, where they hoped to find a new weapon against their enemies. The group sought to retake Mandalore from the new Mandalorians, who were allied with the Republic and the Jedi. Vizsla believed that beings trained in the dark side could possibly help them defeat the Jedi and restore tradition to their homeworld. Upon their arrival on their hidden base, medical droids began the difficult task of repairing the shattered bodies of the brothers. Maul received a new pair of mechanical legs that restored him to his natural height, replacing the makeshift limbs gifted to him by Mother Talzin. Savage Opress also underwent surgery to replace his lost arm with a metallic prosthetic. When Maul finally woke, he found himself surrounded by armored Mandalorians. Vizsla and Bo-Katan questioned him, threatening to end the life of his brother if he did not provide answers. Maul spoke with a cold voice, declaring that they were the true lords of the Sith and served no master. He shared his hatred for Obi-Wan Kenobi, a name that resonated deeply with Vizsla. Kenobi once foiled his plan of taking over Mandalore. That's when the Mandalorian leader realized they share a common foe in the Jedi Master, and he ordered the droids to finish their work so that an alliance could be discussed properly. Maul eventually met with Vizsla in a more private setting when the Mandalorian explained the history of Death Watch. He spoke of their exile from Mandalore and their desire to reclaim their warrior heritage from the pacifist government led by Duchess Satine. Maul saw an opportunity to gain the army he needed to exact his revenge. During his last encounter with the Jedi, Maul realized that it would take more than just him and Opress to kill Kenobi, who had the backing of an entire order and an army of clones. That's when he thought he himself also needed his own group to control, making the Death Watch perfect allies. Maul proposed a formal alliance, claiming it was the destiny of the Force for them to join forces. Bo-Katan was skeptical and reminded her leader that previous deals with the Sith only led to betrayal. She insulted the Sith by comparing them to the Jedi. Maul responded by using the Force to choke her, demonstrating his power until the other Mandalorians drew their weapons. He promised that together they would conquer Mandalore and destroy their shared enemies like Count Dooku and Kenobi. Savage Opress soon emerged from his coma and immediately destroyed the droids around him with his new arm. Maul calmed his brother, explaining that the Mandalorians possessed a sense of honor that made them more reliable than the pirates they had previously employed. While Savage viewed honor as a weakness, he followed the lead of his brother. Vizsla announced that his warriors had voted to accept the alliance. Their first move was to build a criminal empire to fund their war and to rival the Sith. They traveled to the volcanic world of Mustafar to confront the leaders of the Black Sun. When the crime lords refused to join them, Maul gave a silent signal to his brother. Savage threw his lightsaber across the room, decapitating the entire council in a single strike. Zaitan Moj, the sole survivor, immediately pledged the Black Sun to the Shadow Collective. Shortly after, the Pike Syndicate also joined their growing ranks on the moon of Zanbar. The Shadow Collective, the name of their new criminal organization, then moved toward the heart of Hutt space on Nal Hutta. They sought to force the Grand Hutt Council into their service, but the Hutts were not easily swayed by threats or displays of power. A fierce battle erupted between the Mandalorians and the hired bounty hunters who guarded the palace. After the defenders were defeated, the brothers captured Oruba the Hutt to extract information about the other Hutts. Oruba revealed that they had fled to Tatooine to seek refuge at the palace of Jabba. Once the information was secured, Maul signaled Savage to execute the Hutt. The fleet then descended upon Tatooine, overwhelming the guards of Jabba until the mighty crime lord had no choice but to join the alliance. To further solidify his grip on the underworld, Maul turned his attention to smaller crime families like the Morubas. While sitting in a cantina and discussing their plans to win over their leader Jan, they were overheard by a spy. The informant warned Jan, who prepared a trap involving poison. Savage led the ground assault on the stronghold while Maul allowed himself to be captured. It was a calculated risk intended to draw the enemy out into the open. As the battle raged, Maul broke free and seized control of the throne room. By the time the fighting stopped, the Marubas were under his thumb. The Shadow Collective was now a force that could challenge the Republic itself, and Maul stood at its center, ready to return to Mandalore and claim his ultimate prize while the galaxy trembled. Maul commanded the Shadow Collective with a single goal, which was to seize control of Mandalore and dismantle the rule of Duchess Satine. He orchestrated a plan where his criminal allies attacked the capital city of Sundari, which made the Duchess appear incompetent. As the citizens grew desperate, Pre Vizsla and the Death Watch arrived to drive the criminals away, earning the trust of the Mandalorian people. However, Pre Vizsla and Bo-Katan betrayed Maul and Savage Opress by arresting them shortly after their victory. Maul expected this betrayal, and used his time in prison to locate a new ally, eventually finding the disgraced former Prime Minister Almec. After the Sith brothers broke out of their cells, they recruited Almec to serve as their political puppet. Maul then entered the Grand Salon and challenged Pre Vizsla to a formal duel for leadership of the planet. They fought a brutal battle until Maul finally gained the upper hand and decapitated Vizsla with the Darksaber. The Death Watch's leader's symbol of power and the ancient lightsaber once held by Tar Vizsla, a legendary Mandalorian Jedi. This act of violence granted Maul command over the Death Watch, although Bo-Katan and her forces refused to bow to a foreign outsider and escaped. Maul placed Almec back in power as the Prime Minister, but it was the Sith Lord who held the true authority over the world. Through blood and manipulation, Maul finally achieved the power he desired, even as the Mandalorian people remained unaware that a Dark Warrior was their true ruler. Chapter 8: Maul's Revenge. Following the successful coup on Mandalore, Maul now had the power to not only challenge the Sith, but also force the Republic to take notice of what is happening on that part of the galaxy. But his primary goal was always to take revenge on Kenobi, with the coup on Mandalore being one of the ways to secure that aspiration. So, when Maul discovered that Duchess Satine Kryze tried to escape and sent a distress message to the Jedi, he saw an opportunity to exact his revenge. He knew of the long history between Kenobi and the Duchess, as they were once close to being lovers when they were younger. Knowing how much Obi-Wan cared about Satine, Maul decided to use her as bait for his old enemy. Since Mandalore was officially neutral in the war, the Jedi Council refused to send help, and Maul correctly predicted that Kenobi would come alone. Kenobi eventually arrived and freed his friend, but Maul and his loyal warriors chased them through the city to their ship. The Mandalorians destroyed the vessel with missiles, and Kenobi was captured along with Satine after a brief struggle against Maul and Savage Opress. In the royal throne room, Maul used the Force to hold Satine while he tried to provoke Kenobi into using the dark side. Kenobi refused to give in and spoke about Maul's past on Dathomir, claiming the dark side was a curse forced on him by the Night Sisters. This made Maul very angry, and he reminded Kenobi that the Jedi was the one truly responsible for his years of suffering in exile. Even though a part of him knew that it was all the machinations of Sidious and his father that led to the pain he suffered, Maul still channeled all his hatred toward the Jedi, because that was the easier way out for him. The focus point of that anger was Obi-Wan, whom he also wanted to be full of the anger that led Maul to the dark side. Maul wanted Kenobi to feel the same agony that he had endured for over a decade, so he ignited the Darksaber and stabbed the Duchess through the chest. Satine died in the arms of the man she loved. The Dark Warrior could have ordered Kenobi's death right then and there, or even killed him with a quick strike. Instead, he wanted Obi-Wan to suffer from the fact that he had lost one of the most important people in his life. Maul wanted to savor a slow but painful plunge into despair instead of killing the Jedi. With that, he ordered the guards to take Kenobi to the prison to live with his loss. He wanted the Jedi to rot in his own misery, but Kenobi never fell into a pit of despair or even flirted with the dark side. To that end, Maul failed to extract the reaction he wanted from Obi-Wan, even if he did break his heart by killing the Duchess. But before Maul could do any more damage to his rival, the Jedi eventually managed to escape with help from Bo-Katan Kryze, who revealed that she was actually the sister of the fallen Duchess. Chapter 9: The Master Humbles the Student. Following Obi-Wan's escape from Mandalore, Bo-Katan Kryze launched a civil war intending to take the planet back from the Death Watch. The Civil War reached a bloody peak as Bo-Katan and her Night Owls engaged the Mandalorian supercommandos in the streets of the capital city. While the Mandalorians fought for the future of their world, a shadow fell over the royal palace in the form of Darth Sidious. The Sith Lord had learned of the activities of Maul through the reports of the Jedi, and he recognized that his former apprentice had become a dangerous rival in the underworld. From afar, he sensed the growing power the Zabrak warrior had been amassing. While he knew that he still had more power both in the dark side and the political sense, Sidious did not want to risk the possibility of his former apprentice challenging his might. The Dark Lord resorted into taking matters into his own hands, leaving the comforts of Coruscant, a rarity for someone of his political stature. As Sidious approached Mandalore in a secret journey aboard his private shuttle, Maul sensed the arrival of his old master. He prepared to face the man who had shaped him, but at the same time, he feared the power of the man who taught him everything he knew, seemingly understanding that he was not yet powerful enough to truly challenge the Dark Lord. Upon their decade-long reunion, Maul claimed that he had built his empire as a gift for Sidious, but the Dark Lord saw through the deception. Sidious told Maul that he had grown into a rival, challenging the rule of two with the growing might of his Shadow Collective. With no hesitation, he attacked Maul and Savage in what initially looked like a disadvantage to the much older Darksider. However, Sidious looked relaxed, even happy during their duel. He more than matched the raw might of the Zabrak warriors, often taking advantage of Savage's lack of skill and experience and Maul's conflicted allegiance. The duel was swift and brutal, and the overwhelming power of the Sith Master was clear from the very first strike. Sidious used the Force to push Maul against a cold stone wall, and he left the younger brother to face him alone. Savage fought with all the strength he possessed, but he was no match for the most powerful being in the galaxy. Sidious drove his blades through the chest of younger brother as Maul could only watch as his brother fell, with the green mist of the Night Sister magic escape the body of the dying warrior. Savage returned to his original form while apologizing to Maul for his failure before he died. Maul's grief quickly turned into a cold rage. While he was conflicted earlier, he was now determined to end his former master once and for all as he used everything he knew to try to defeat Sidious. He managed to hold his own for a short time, but the skill and experience of Sidious were far beyond anything Maul could overcome. The Sith Master disarmed him with ease before using the Force to slam the Dathomirian against the hard surfaces of the room until he was broken and bleeding. Defeated and disgraced, Maul begged for mercy from the man who had stolen his life, but Sidious reminded him that mercy was not the way of the Sith. He tortured Maul with blasts of Force lightning, but he kept him alive because he had a greater purpose for the broken warrior. In truth, Sidious planned to use Maul as a lure to draw Mother Talzin out of hiding. Earlier in the war, Count Dooku sent General Grievous and a massive droid army to Dathomir to destroy the Night Sisters after Talzin betrayed the other Sith Lord. However, Talzin used her magic to escape certain death, hiding in the form of a spirit while trying to regain her strength. Knowing that Talzin still cared about her only remaining son, Sidious took his prisoner to the remote prison of Stygian Prime. The Spire was a fortress located deep within the mountains, and it was there that Count Dooku arrived to continue the work of his master. Dooku interrogated Maul about the Shadow Collective, using his own dark powers to try and extract the names of the allies who supported the Zabrak. Maul remained defiant despite the constant pain, refusing to betray the remnants of his criminal empire. The Sith continued their games of torture, but their session was interrupted when a hole was blown into the side of the prison wall. Rook Kast and Gar Saxon led a daring rescue mission with the Death Watch, pulling Maul from the wreckage of his cell. They escaped the mountain fortress and fled to the world of Zanbar, where the rest of the Mandalorian forces waited for their leader. Maul contacted Prime Minister Almec, and he realized that his freedom was a sign of the loyalty of his people. He reclaimed the Darksaber and prepared his warriors for the war that was coming, but the Separatist fleet was already closing in on their position. General Grievous arrived with a massive droid army to turn the moon of Zanbar into a field of fire, as the two forces collided in a desperate battle. Maul fought desperately as he engaged the droid general in a fierce duel, but the mechanical strength of Grievous forced him back. The Mandalorians suffered heavy losses against the endless waves of droids, forcing Maul to realize that he had to retreat if he wanted his people to survive. He ordered his ships to flee the system. However, instead of giving chase, Grievous allowed them to go according to the orders of Dooku. The Sith allowed Maul to escape because they knew he would seek help from his mother on Dathomir to set the final stages of the trap for Mother Talzin. Chapter 10. The Alliance with Dooku. The shadow of defeat hung over Maul as he fled the world of Zanbar, reaching out through the Force to find the spirit of Mother Talzin. She appeared to him as a ghostly figure in a cloud of green smoke, guiding her son away from the trap she knew Darth Sidious was setting for them. Talzin directed Maul to the world of Ord Mantell, where the Black Sun maintained a secret stronghold and plenty of resources for his Shadow Collective. She wanted him to lure Count Dooku and General Grievous into a trap of his own, believing that Sidious would not expect such a bold move from a hunted fugitive. Talzin remained hidden from the front lines, knowing the Sith Lord sought her destruction above all else because of her ancient magic. Maul arrived on the planet and met with his allies, including Zitan Maj of the Black Sun and Fife of the Pike Syndicate. He laid out his plan to turn the planet into a killing ground for the Separatist droid army, even though his allies felt nervous about the cost. While his allies harbored doubts about facing the full might of the Separatists, Maul remained confident in his tactical superiority and the strength of his combined forces. To bolster his army, Talzin sent a group of Night Brother warriors led by Brother Viscus to serve as Maul's personal guard during the upcoming struggle. The Separatist fleet soon arrived in orbit, prompting Maul to take to the skies in Mandalorian warships to strike at the heart of the enemy fleet before they could deploy their full strength. High above the planet, Maul led a boarding action against the massive command ship of General Grievous and cornered the cyborg general. Maul gave his enemy a choice between a quick death or deactivating the entire droid army currently fighting on the surface. Grievous chose to live, sending the command signal that rendered his entire army useless in an instant. Down on the surface, the tide of the battle turned as the droids went silent and fell where they stood. Count Dooku fought valiantly against the Night Brothers, but he was eventually overwhelmed and captured by the Shadow Collective forces. With both the General and the Count in his possession, Maul contacted Talzin to report his victory over their enemies. They shared a moment of triumph, believing they finally had the leverage needed to draw Sidious out and exact their long-awaited revenge for years of suffering. Maul then ordered his fleet to abandon Ord Mantell, leaving behind almost no evidence of their presence as they retreated to a secret Mandalorian supply outpost known as Vizsla Keep 9 to prepare for the next phase. Inside the outpost, Maul contacted his former master to boast of his valuable prizes. Sidious showed no concern for his subordinates, telling Maul to execute them both as they were no longer of any use to his grand design. Maul ignored the order, instead turning his attention to Dooku in an attempt to turn the Count against their mutual master. He spoke of the betrayal they both suffered while Mother Talzin appeared through her magic to reveal the history of Sidious's many lies. She told Dooku how Sidious stole Maul from her when he was just a child, and now he was already planning to replace Dooku with a newer apprentice from the Jedi Order. Before a true alliance could be formed, a Republic strike team led by Jedi Masters Obi-Wan Kenobi, Aayla Secura, Tiplee, and Mace Windu attacked the base. The Jedi had tracked the collective from Ord Mantell and arrived with a force of clones to end the conflict. In the chaos of the assault, General Grievous managed to reach an escape pod and fled into the stars alone. Maul and Dooku found themselves forced to fight side by side against the Jedi to survive the night. The battle ended when Rook cast using an explosive to stun the Jedi, providing the window Maul and Dooku needed to flee the outpost. They escaped together, heading toward the red sands of Dathomir for a final confrontation with the Sith Master. Chapter 11. The Final Confrontation with Sidious. Maul fled from the outpost and directed his followers toward Dathomir, while he dealt with the growing concerns of the Pikes and the Black Sun. These criminals worried that his personal vendetta against the Sith was ruining their common interest, but Maul assured them that they would receive their payment once Sidious was dead. He ordered Saxon to keep the syndicates under control before he turned his attention to his prisoner. Maul told Count Dooku that he was well aware of the deception, and he knew that the Count was only pretending to be an ally on the orders of his master. When they reached the surface of the planet, Brother Viscus greeted them and led the group to the heart of the stronghold. Mother Talzin appeared in a cloud of green smoke and immediately began to drain the life force from Dooku because she needed a powerful sacrifice to regain her physical body. However, the ritual was cut short when a massive explosion tore through the temple. Darth Sidious and General Grievous arrived to reclaim their pawn, and the Dark Lord reminded Maul that there was only one plan that truly mattered in the galaxy. A great battle began, with Talzin taking control of Dooku's physical form to trade blows with Sidious. Maul fought against the cyborg general before he eventually pushed the droid commander away from the central chamber. Sidious used his lightning to overwhelm the witch, which forced her to leave Dooku and manifest her true self again. Maul begged his mother to take his own life force so she could survive the onslaught, but Talzin refused to let her son perish. She used her magic to push Maul away from the fighting. The Mandalorian warriors quickly dragged him toward their waiting ships. As he was being pulled away, Maul watched as General Grievous returned and drove his lightsabers through the chest of Mother Talzin. Maul escaped into space while the Separatist army destroyed the remnants of his collective. To Sidious, the mission was a success, because his former apprentice was now broken and alone with no power left to challenge the Sith, even if he did regain his power on Mandalore. Despite failing to defeat his former master, Maul was far from a defeated man. His strength and resolve may have weakened, but he was still prepared to formulate new plans for the future of this syndicate, as well as the darkness that was to come in the galaxy. He returned to the world of Mandalore with his loyal forces, staying in hiding while he managed his criminal empire. The Pike Syndicate and Black Sun eventually rejoined his Shadow Collective, and he also formed a partnership with the group known as Crimson Dawn. One day, a major shipment of spice was lost when a pilot named Trace Martez dumped the cargo during a flight. This mistake brought Maul into a hologram meeting with the Pike leader named Marg Krim. Maul was displeased with the delay, telling Krim that any failure could ruin his entire plan for the galaxy. Krim defended his actions by mentioning that the Republic was raiding his shipments on Coruscant. Maul immediately asked if any Jedi were involved in these raids. As they spoke, Maul sensed something and looked toward a set of pipes where Ahsoka Tano was hiding. He did not find her, so he focused his attention back on the hologram. He warned Krim that Crimson Dawn would take over the spice trade if another delay occurred. After giving this warning, Maul ended the call and returned to his preparations. The former Sith apprentice continued to wait for the right moment to reveal his presence to his enemies. Chapter 12: The Siege of Mandalore. The Clone Wars were nearing its end, with the Jedi and the Republic pushing the Separatists further and further to the edge of defeat. However, the Jedi had been kept busy. The Chancellor, just before he was captured by the Separatists, ordered the deployment of more Jedi and clones to the farthest reaches of the Separatist territories. Meanwhile, the main force was on Coruscant when the Separatists launched a daring attack on the capital in hopes of turning the tide of the war to their favor. On Mandalore, Maul experienced a dark vision that revealed the truth of the future. He saw that Anakin Skywalker was the key to the ultimate victory of Darth Sidious. He realized the young Jedi was destined to become the new apprentice of his former master, so he created a plan to change the galaxy at the edge of the city. He intended to lure both Obi-Wan Kenobi and Skywalker to Mandalore, where he hoped to kill the boy and strike a blow against Sidious while also reclaiming his revenge against Kenobi. During the final days of the Clone Wars, Maul was under siege by the forces of Bo-Katan Kryze and a division of clones led by Rex and Ahsoka Tano. As the Battle of Coruscant raged on, Skywalker sent Ahsoka and a portion of the 501st Legion to Mandalore to assist Bo-Katan in their fight for the planet's liberty. Maul received word that a Jedi had arrived on the planet, and he assumed his old enemy Kenobi had come to face him at last. But when the Jedi appeared, Maul was disappointed to find it was only the former Padawan Ahsoka Tano. Maul questioned the girl and asked why she had come, all while expressing his frustration that Kenobi and Skywalker were not there. Ahsoka explained that Kenobi was occupied with a more pressing engagement as he was busy rescuing the Chancellor and fighting Count Dooku during the Battle of Coruscant. Maul dismissed Ahsoka's request to surrender as a foolish gesture, and he told her that the Jedi Order and the Republic would soon fall into ruin. He revealed that Darth Sidious would soon take control of everything to bring the era of the Jedi to an end. Just as they spoke, Commander Rex and his troops from the Grand Army of the Republic arrived and opened fire, which forced Maul and his Mandalorians to retreat. During the chaos, Maul managed to capture an ARC trooper named Jesse, bringing the prisoner back for a brutal interrogation. He used a powerful mind probe to look into the mind of the soldier to extract every detail about Ahsoka and the current state of the war. As the battle raged, Maul contacted the leaders of the Shadow Collective to give them his final orders. He spoke with Marg Krim and Zaitan Maj and Dryden Voss, telling them to take their syndicates into hiding to survive the coming change. Gar Saxon returned after silencing the great leader Almec, and Maul thanked his loyal Mandalorian followers for their dedication. He then told Saxon and Rook Kast that the galaxy was about to be remade, urging them to seize as much power as they could. He promised them that they would have the chance to die as warriors on the field of battle before preparing for the final meeting with his enemies. He sat upon the throne and waited for Ahsoka and Bo-Katan to arrive before handing Jesse back to have an opportunity to talk to Ahsoka. Once they were alone, Maul spoke to Ahsoka about the failures of the Jedi, and he reminded her that they were both outcasts who had been abandoned. He told her that justice was about to disappear before asking her to join him so that they could destroy Darth Sidious together. Ahsoka asked him what he wanted with Skywalker, and Maul explained that the boy was the key to the destruction of the galaxy. He revealed that Sidious intended to make Skywalker his next apprentice, but Ahsoka refused to believe his words and accused him of lying. The time for talking was over as the two engaged in a duel. As the two skilled warriors crossed blades, Maul continued to try to convince Ahsoka to join his side. But the Togruta warrior was incorruptible as Ahsoka took the fight to the top of a city building. While the Mandalorian forces under Gar Saxon were being defeated by the Republic clones, Maul chose to abandon his men to save himself. He told Saxon that a ship was coming for him, leaving the commander to be captured by the soldiers shortly afterward. When Ahsoka finally caught up with Maul at the top of the structure. As the escape ship for Maul arrived, he managed to take Ahsoka's weapons to destroy the beam she stood upon, leaving her trapped and cornered. Maul offered her one last chance to join him, but she refused his offer without any doubt. This made Maul angry, and he attacked her again with his blade. However, Ahsoka turned things around and took the upper hand, pushing Maul over the edge. She did not let him fall to his death, but instead used the Force to hold him in the air. Maul told her to let him die because he did not want to be a prisoner, but she refused as the gunships arrived to take him into custody. As he was led away, Maul shouted that everyone would soon die and that they had no idea what was coming, though the clones did not listen to his warnings. Chapter 13. Order 66. Shortly after the former Sith Lord's defeat, Maul was placed inside a special Mandalorian vault that was built to hold those who could use the Force. He was soon taken onto the Star Destroyer called the Tribunal. The ship was commanded by Ahsoka, who had been told by the Jedi Council to bring him to Coruscant to stand trial for his many crimes. However, during the trip, the hidden Sith Lord known as Palpatine revealed himself as Darth Sidious and gave the order to kill all Jedi. This was called Order 66, and it caused Rex and the other clones to turn on Ahsoka because of the inhibitor chips secretly installed in their heads during their creation. Maul felt the change in the Force from his cell, realizing that his former master was finally taking control of the galaxy. Two clones came to his room to kill him because Sidious wanted his former apprentice dead once and for all. Before they could fire their guns, Ahsoka arrived and knocked them out, and she then freed Maul from his restraints. Maul was surprised that she was still alive, as he laughed at the cleverness of Sidious for using the Jedi's own army to destroy them. He asked Ahsoka to join him, but she said no and told him he was only there to cause trouble and distract the clones. She did not give him a weapon to use, leaving him to fight his way through the ship with nothing but his hands and his power. Even without a lightsaber, Maul was very dangerous as he moved through the ship. He used the Force to pull metal plates from the walls, using them to kill the clones in his path. He showed no mercy to the soldiers who tried to stop him, and he even pulled the arm off a trooper through a closing door so that he could steal a radio. This allowed him to hear what the clones were saying to each other as they hunted for Ahsoka. Maul then went to the room where the hyperdrive was kept. He then used the Force to tear the controls apart and pull the hyperdrive machinery down, which caused the ship to stop moving through hyperspace. The vessel began falling toward a moon because it was caught in its gravity. As the ship began to crash, Maul went to the hangar to find a way off the vessel. He saw a shuttle and started running toward it, but Ahsoka saw him and tried to stop him. Maul used the Force to push her away, telling her that he was only doing what she wanted by causing chaos. Ahsoka almost killed him with her lightsabers, but she had to stop when Rex and her droids were in danger. Maul used this moment to get into the shuttle and fly away into hyperspace, hoping to build his power once again. While these events happened on the ship, a different battle took place on the world of Mustafar. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker fought each other in a mining facility. During this fight, Obi-Wan felt the great hatred coming from his former friend, which was a feeling he had known before. This hatred was very strong, and it reminded Obi-Wan of the dark feelings he had sensed from Maul and other dark side users in the past. It was a dark time for the galaxy, as the Jedi were hunted and the Sith took control of everything. The galaxy was soon plunged into chaos shortly after the events of Order 66, with Anakin completely transforming into the cybernetic Sith Lord called Darth Vader. Meanwhile, Sidious sat at the top of a newly christened galactic empire as Emperor Palpatine. Maul's nightmare had come true, and he could not do anything to stop his former master from realizing the dream they once shared together. Chapter 14: The Crime Lord. As Maul had foreseen, Anakin Skywalker fell to the dark side and became the new apprentice to Darth Sidious under the name of Darth Vader. With this new student by his side, Sidious established the Galactic Empire and began the Great Jedi Purge, which was the next step in his plan for the galaxy. Vader and his corrupted Jedi, the Inquisitors, hunted the remaining Jedi, working to destroy the Order that Maul once hated. Maul himself became a target for these hunters, but they were never able to find him. Over the years, the Imperial hunters began to call him the Shadow because he was so hard to find. During this time, Maul made a new lightsaber for himself, using parts he took from the weapons of the Inquisitors he defeated in battle. While the Jedi were being hunted, a former Padawan named Farron Barr became interested in Maul. He kept a file on the former Sith Lord inside a droid, hoping to understand how the Jedi had fallen so quickly to the Sith. Eventually, Vader found Barr on the world of Mon Cala. Before he was killed by the Sith Lord, Barr had his droid save the information so that the history of the Sith would not be forgotten. Around this same time, Obi-Wan Kenobi was living in hiding on the desert world of Tatooine to watch over one of Anakin Skywalker's secret children from his marriage with the deceased Senator Padme Amidala. A farmer named Owen Lars told Kenobi to stay away from his nephew Luke Skywalker because he believed Kenobi was a dangerous man who always found trouble. Kenobi agreed with the farmer, but he also thought about how he had survived many dangerous enemies like Count Dooku, General Grievous, and Maul. After he escaped the early days of the Purge, Maul returned to his home world of Dathomir. He lived among the ruins and used the old relics and potions of the Night Sisters to make himself stronger. He wanted revenge more than anything else, so he became the secret leader of a criminal group called Crimson Dawn. He used a man named Dryden Voss to lead the group in public while he stayed in the shadows. Maul also controlled the 5 biggest crime syndicates and kept them from fighting each other. Some of the criminals did not like how Maul treated them, but they stayed quiet because they were making a lot of money under his leadership. One man named Delorium tried to start his own group because he was tired of Maul, but he was not successful. To hide his identity while he traveled, Maul wore a hooded cloak and used a lightsaber that looked like a wooden walking staff. During this time, a woman named Kira met Maul for the first time, and this meeting changed her life forever. In the year 10 BBY, Dryden Voss was killed, and Kira became the new public leader of Crimson Dawn. She contacted Maul on Dathomir and told him that Voss had been killed by a man named Tobias Beckett. Maul was not happy to hear this, telling Kira to come to Dathomir so they could plan their next move. He told her that they would be working much more closely from then on. Maul began to teach Kira about the Sith and the Rule of Two. He told her that the Emperor was actually a Sith Lord named Darth Sidious and that Vader was his apprentice. Maul trained Kira to fight and prepared her to help him destroy the Sith. He wanted to use the power of Crimson Dawn to take down the Empire. He also looked for an ancient weapon called the Fermata Cage, which was a dark side tool that could freeze time and trap people inside. Maul hoped to find an old Sith Lord trapped in the cage and release them so they would attack Sidious and Vader. He thought this would be a good way to use the Rule of Two against his enemies. However, Maul was never able to make the weapon work the way he wanted. Even though he failed to find the ancient Sith, he continued to use Kira and his criminal empire to work against the men who had taken everything from him. Chapter 15: Internal Strife. The years of the Galactic Empire were a time of deep obsession for Maul, as he remained consumed by a desire to destroy Darth Sidious and obtain his long-awaited revenge against the Sith Order that betrayed him. Knowing that he could not underestimate his enemies, he traveled to many worlds in search of an advantage that would help him in his mission. This quest for power eventually led him to the outer rim planet of Demonos, which was a world covered in gray ash and home to an ancient Sith castle. Upon entering the Dark Fortress, Maul encountered a vision of his fallen brother Savage Opress, who mocked him by claiming they were no longer kin. The Spectre attacked, forcing Maul to defend himself against a rage that mirrored his own. During the duel, the Vision accused Maul of seeking power only to mask his own feelings of helplessness. Maul eventually realized the figure was a mere shadow, and he ended the fight by driving his blade through the belly of the imposter. As the body fell to the ground, it transformed into a vision of Maul's own corpse, which whispered in the voice of oppressed that he had failed his brother. This sight filled him with a bitter anger, and he pushed forward in the deeper parts of the castle to find the source of the dark energy he felt. Deep within the throne room of the castle, Maul felt the presence of another enemy from his past. General Grievous emerged from the shadows, leaping from the ceiling with 4 lightsabers ignited to strike at the former Sith Lord. The mechanical monster taunted Maul about the death of Mother Talzin on Dathomir, reminding him that it was the droid general who had taken the life of his mother. Grievous also mocked the fact that Kenobi was the one who eventually killed the general, effectively stealing the revenge that Maul believed belonged to him. Although Maul felt a sharp pain from these memories, he focused on his hatred and began to dismember the cyborg vision. Grievous laughed even as he lost his limbs, asking if Maul truly felt any comfort knowing that the murderer of his mother was dead. When Maul found himself unable to answer, the vision told him that he was refusing to leave his old life behind. Maul eventually struck down the apparition, but he found no peace in the victory, as the darkness of the castle only made his internal wounds feel more prominent. The final chamber of the temple held a different kind of trial, as Maul passed through a simple door and found himself standing before a vision of the Jedi Master he had killed many years ago, Qui-Gon Jinn. Unlike the others, Jinn did not draw a weapon or offer a challenge to a duel. Instead, the Jedi offered Maul a chance to walk away from his path of hatred and find a way to be free from the prison of his past. Jinn asked what would remain for Maul once his enemies were finally dead, suggesting that the former Sith was actually motivated by his internal pain rather than true rage. This suggestion offended Maul, who believed the Jedi was merely trying to manipulate him or taunt him into a state of weakness. Refusing to listen to the wisdom of the Spectre, Maul lashed out with his lightsaber, causing the vision of Jinn to vanish into the air. With the disappearance of the Jedi, the dark power that had drawn Maul to the castle also faded away, leaving him alone in the silence. Maul returned to his ship feeling empty and hollow, yet he chose to continue his hunt for dark secrets across the galaxy, as he was still unable to let go of the vengeance that defined his existence. Chapter 16: Maul and Ezra Bridger. It was late into the reign of the Galactic Empire, and Maul wandered the galaxy in search of a way to destroy his old master. His journey eventually led him to the world of Malachor, where an ancient Sith temple held a holocron of power. But Maul found himself unable to unlock the secrets of the temple, and his ship was soon destroyed, leaving him stranded on the surface for many years. It was around the year 3 BBY that a young Jedi apprentice named Ezra Bridger arrived on the planet with his companions. Maul encountered the boy and chose to hide his true identity, calling himself the Old Master while acting like a weak man. He told Ezra that he had also crashed on the world and that he wanted to find the holocron to defeat the Sith who had taken everything from him. Through these lies, Maul began to manipulate the boy, sensing that Ezra had a connection to the Force that could be used. The boy felt a sense of pity for the old man, unaware that he was being led into a trap by a master of deception. Nonetheless, the two of them worked together to enter the temple, and Maul guided Ezra through various physical traits that required the use of the dark side. He encouraged the boy to use his anger and his feelings of loss to overcome the obstacles, slowly pulling him away from the teachings of the Jedi. They eventually recovered a special key that granted them access to the temple, where they met up with the teachers of Ezra, Kanan Jarrus, and Ahsoka Tano. These rebels were already engaged in a battle with 3 Imperial Inquisitors hunting the Jedi down. While the Jedi did not trust the stranger, as Ahsoka herself had a complicated past with the former Sith, they agreed to work with Maul to drive the Inquisitors away. Not long after, Maul warned them that the Dark Lord Darth Vader would surely arrive soon, and he insisted that they must all fight together if they hoped to survive the coming battle. As such, Maul continued to speak to the young apprentice as they climbed the temple, telling him that the Jedi was way too weak to defeat their enemies. They encountered the 7th sister, and Maul quickly subdued her using a Force choke. He commanded Ezra to strike her down to prove his resolve, but the boy hesitated because of his Jedi training. Disappointed by this mercy, Maul threw his own lightsaber and killed the woman himself, warning Ezra that his hesitation would one day lead to the death of his friends. They eventually reunited with the others and engaged the remaining Inquisitors in a final duel. Maul and Ahsoka fought together, managing to kill the 5th brother. Meanwhile, the eighth brother attempted to fly away using his lightsaber, but the weapon failed as he fell to his death in the depths below. With the Inquisitors dead, Maul finally revealed his true intentions and turned on the Jedi who had helped him. He struck at Kanan Jarrus and blinded him with a strike of his blade, hoping to remove the man as a threat once and for all, as he believed Jarrus was the only one keeping Ezra away from the dark side. Maul then declared that the temple was actually a weapon that he intended to use for his own purposes, before claiming that Ezra would become his new apprentice. Ahsoka went to find Ezra while the blinded Kanan stood his ground against the Night Brother. Maul laughed at the Jedi, believing the fight would be over in a single moment. But Kanan used the Force to sense his surroundings, managing to catch Maul by surprise to throw him off the edge of the temple. Maul fell into the darkness below, but he managed to survive the drop and stole an Inquisitor's ship to escape the planet. Although he failed to claim the weapon, Maul left Malachor knowing that he had influenced the young Ezra Bridger. Chapter 17. Reignited Vengeance. The year was 2 BBY. The shadows of the past returned to haunt the growing rebellion as Maul resurfaced and found his way onto a Hammerhead corvette, where he interrogated a rebel to find the location of the freighter known as the Ghost. This ship belonged to Hera Syndulla and her crew, which included the young apprentice, Ezra Bridger. Maul moved quickly to seize the vessel and take the crew hostage while the Jedi were away. When Kanan and Ezra discovered the attack, they contacted Hera only to find that Maul held their friend in his grasp. The former Sith demanded a trade, insisting that the Jedi bring him both the Sith and Jedi holocrons in exchange for the lives of their companions. While the Jedi went to retrieve the Sith holocron, Maul remained on the Ghost with his captives. He forced Hera to give him a tour of the ship, all while mocking the dull living quarters of the Jedi. When Hera refused to reveal the location of the Jedi holocron, Maul used the Force to invade her mind. He learned that Ezra had stolen the device once before, and he found it hidden in a compartment beneath the bed of Kanan Jarrus. During this time, the crew attempted to escape by using magnets to trap Maul by his mechanical legs. Their plan briefly succeeded, but Maul used the Force to disable the controls. He threatened to kill them all, proving that his patience was thin and his power was still great. Maul eventually brought the Ghost to a Mandalorian asteroid outpost for the exchange. When the Jedi arrived, Maul separated the Master from the apprentice. He sent Ezra with his droids to a command center, and he led Kanan toward an airlock. Seeking to eliminate the older Jedi once and for all, Maul pushed Kanan into the vacuum of space and closed the door. He believed that Kanan was dead before proceeding to meet Ezra to begin their ritual. The droids stood guard over the prisoners as the Master and apprentice began their work. Maul sat across from the boy on the floor, and they prepared to merge the two ancient devices of power. The holocrons began to glow as they merged together and created a blinding light that filled the room. Ezra sought the key to destroying the Sith, all while seeing visions of distant stars and familiar worlds. Maul searched for his own answers, hoping to find a path to his ultimate goal of destroying the Sith. However, Kanan had survived the cold of space and returned to rescue his friends and his apprentice. He arrived at the command center just as the energy became unstable. Ezra saw visions of twin suns, and Maul realized that his old enemy was still alive. The holocrons exploded, and this gave Maul a chance to flee to his ship. He left the outpost while shouting, "He lives! He lives!" as he escaped. Chapter 18. Hunting Kenobi Down. The ritual involving the holocrons may not have revealed to Maul how to destroy the Sith, but it did reveal to him something he wanted more than anything: vengeance on Obi-Wan Kenobi. Throughout his life following the events on Naboo decades ago, Maul was driven solely by his quest for revenge against the man who nearly killed him. He failed to destroy Kenobi multiple times during the Clone Wars. Then, when Order 66 happened, Maul had believed his rival perished along with the other Jedi. He did not know whether or not Kenobi was still alive until that fateful moment with Ezra Bridger. Maul now had a renewed purpose: to finally end his rivalry with Obi-Wan Kenobi once and for all. As for Ezra, the ritual involving the two holocrons created a mental link between him and Maul. This connection allowed them to gain information that they both desperately wanted. Maul used his bond to find the secret rebel location on the planet Atollon, and he began to torment the young Jedi by causing him to see and hear terrifying visions. On one occasion, the boy even attacked a rebel trooper because he mistook the man for the Darksider. Later, Maul approached Ezra and Kanan Jarrus while they were speaking to a Force wielder named Bendu in the wilderness. Bendu warned them not to turn around, but the two Jedi did so and saw Maul watching them from the top of a sand dune. Maul claimed he came in peace to speak with his apprentice, and he explained that the sudden end of their ritual left their visions in fragments. He told them he needed Ezra to come with him to retrieve the rest of the information, all while threatening to activate a beacon that would bring the Empire to the planet if he died. Kanan reluctantly agreed to the demand, so Ezra departed with Maul on a ship called the Night Brother to travel to the world of Dathomir. Unknown to the pair, Kanan and Sabine Wren placed a tracker on the boy and followed them to the ruins of the Night Sister lair. Maul led Ezra into a cave filled with relics from his past, including a portrait of Duchess Satine and the ancient weapon known as the Darksaber. He explained that the only way to get the answers they wanted was to merge their minds again through a ritual. They drank from glasses of magic water that turned their eyes green and caused bright rays to shoot from their faces. Through this magic, they discovered that the Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi was alive and hiding on a planet with twin suns. They also learned that Kenobi held the key to destroying the Sith for good. This news gave Maul a new sense of purpose, as he now had the opportunity to kill two birds with one stone: the death of Kenobi and the destruction of the Sith. But the ritual also had a dangerous side effect that they did not expect. The magic awakened the spirits of the dead Night Sisters, and these ghosts demanded that the two men sacrifice their flesh and blood in exchange for the knowledge they received. Kanan and Sabine entered the cave and tried to shoot the spirits, but the ghosts were too strong and possessed the bodies of the two rebels. The possessed Kanan and Sabine attacked their friends, forcing Maul and Ezra to defend themselves without hurting their companions. Maul fought Kanan while Ezra dodged the attacks from Sabine, and they eventually realized the spirits were bound to the altar inside the cave. They managed to reach the entrance where the ghosts could not follow because their power was limited to the lair. Maul offered Ezra a place by his side again, and he claimed their destinies were tied to the desert world with the twin suns. Ezra refused to leave his friends, frustrating the former Sith with this display of loyalty and compassion. Maul told the boy he was a disappointment, and then he left the planet to search for his old enemy. Chapter 19: Final Confrontation with an Old Rival. Maul eventually made his way to the surface of Tatooine as he used the knowledge from the two holocrons to find his old enemy, Obi-Wan Kenobi. He searched the desert for many days, and he soon realized that he was lost in the vast wastes. He was tired and thirsty, and he thought he might die in the sand under the heat of the twin suns. He fell down and shouted the name of Kenobi with all his strength, and his voice went out across the empty world. But his will was strong, and he found a reason to keep moving forward. He knew he could not find Kenobi alone, and so he planned to trick the boy he called his apprentice. He used the Sith holocron to send a vision to Ezra Bridger, hoping the boy would lead him to the hidden Jedi. Ezra saw the vision and was immediately alarmed as he believed Kenobi was in danger. He then traveled to the planet to stop Maul from killing the old Jedi Master. He also wanted to ask the Master to join the rebellion before he landed his ship in a canyon at night. Ezra then found the holocron part that Maul used as a bait, eventually realizing it was a trap as a group of Tusken Raiders appeared. The Raiders attacked Ezra and his droid, destroying his ship in the fight. Ezra was knocked out by the blast, but Maul came out of the shadows to kill the Raiders with his red blade. He then left Ezra alone in the sand without saying a word as he waited for the boy to move. Ezra and Chopper woke up and looked for a way to leave the canyon. They were not sure if they should stay in the hills or walk into the open desert. Maul appeared to Ezra as a vision, telling the boy to walk into the sands to find his destiny. Ezra followed the advice, but the heat was too strong for him and the droid. They both fell over in a sandstorm, almost dying in the dirt. But Obi-Wan Kenobi arrived on a dewback and found them in the storm. He took them to his camp and started a small fire. He then gave the droid power and fixed the wounds of the boy. When Ezra woke up, Kenobi told him that Maul had used him to find the way to his home. Maul arrived at the camp then, and he was ready to finish their old fight at last. Ezra wanted to help, but the Master told the boy to go back to his friends and stay away. Ezra and Chopper left, and Maul said goodbye to the boy before facing Kenobi. Maul looked at the simple camp, and he laughed at how poor Kenobi was living in the dirt. He told Kenobi that he was living like a rat, wondering if being dead would be better than this lonely life. Kenobi was calm, and he told Maul that he was the one who had nothing because he only lived for hate and power. Kenobi's words angered Maul, for they were the harsh truths the former Sith could never accept. Throughout his life, Maul lived for nothing except hatred and the quest for more power. He He had held on to his hatred most of his life, wanting to use it against the Jedi and the people who wronged him. But even though Maul survived for decades by holding on to this desire for revenge, he could never accept that this was a meaningless life. He could have chosen to live different many times after his mother restored his sanity many years ago. But instead of doing so, he held on to his rage in the hopes of finding meaning. Unbeknownst to Maul, his anger only led to a meaningless existence. But right then and there, he only had eyes for Kenobi, wanting to see the old master's death once and for all. He used his lightsaber to throw sand on the fire and put it out. He thought about why Kenobi would stay in the desert for so many years, and he knew it was not just to hide from the Empire. Eventually, Maul realized that Kenobi was protecting someone, and he saw a boy in the mind of the Jedi. He saw Luke Skywalker, whom he believed was someone so important that Obi-Wan had to live the rest of his entire life on a desert to protect. Realizing Luke could be in danger as he believed the boy to be the only hope the galaxy had left, Kenobi was forced to stand up and ignite his lightsaber. He immediately took a defensive stance to protect the secret. Maul turned on both ends of his red blade, and the two men looked at each other in the dark. Kenobi changed his stance to look like his old master, and Maul thought he could win by using the same move he used to kill Qui-Gon Jinn long ago on Naboo. Maul ran forward, and the two fighters hit their blades together in the night. Maul tried to hit Kenobi in the face with the handle of his weapon, but Kenobi was faster this time. Obi-Wan parried every single one of Maul's attacks before predicting the next move, the same lightsaber hilt attack that stunned Qui-Gon decades ago. As a master of the defensive form of Seresu, Obi-Wan had perfected a counter for this move. Before Maul could hit him with the lightsaber handle, Kenobi moved his blade down and cut through Maul's weapon and his chest. Maul stopped and looked at the wound as he fell into his rival's arms with his life fading away. He was dying, and he asked if the boy was the chosen one. Kenobi said that he was, and Maul felt a sense of peace. He said that the boy would avenge them both against the Sith before dying in the arms of his enemy. In what was a final act of mercy, Kenobi closed the eyes of his old rival and laid him to rest in the sand. Refusing to let go of his hatred his entire life, Maul finally let his emotions go at the end of his life as he realized far too late that he had been holding on to the wrong things. Ironically, he died in the merciful arms of the man whom he swore he hated the most, only for Obi-Wan to show sadness and mercy toward his tragic rival at the end of the Dathomirian Zabrak's life. Was it all worth it for Maul to have spent his entire life fueled by hatred and vengeance? Even he would say at the end of it all that he could have lived his life differently had he been given another chance. But such was the fate of a tragic figure whose mind and emotions had been twisted by darkness early on. And in the end, all he saw was darkness, as he peacefully let go of the negativity that kept him alive for so long.